The Pittsburgh Steelers are adding depth to their defensive line. And I think right now is the perfect time to look at the situation and say it's the time to begin pulling TJ Watt back and preparing to shut him down for the rest of the season. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackfine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/all Steelers talk or anywhere you get your podcasts. And today we're going to dive deep into TJ Watt and the Steelers moves and the zero reasons almost to keep him on the active roster for the remainder of the season. TJ Watt returned from the pec injury and things seemed bright. The Steelers started winning again. The season looked like it was in an upward trajectory and the playoffs were still a thing. All you had to do was make one crazy run, and it's Pittsburgh. Those crazy runs happen. We've seen them time and time again. Now, as we sit here today, it's starting to look like maybe that's not the case. And it's also starting to look like maybe the Steelers are preparing to shut down Watt. Over the last 48 hours, the Pittsburgh Steelers have lost Chris Wormley for the remainder of the season with a torn ACL, and they have also signed two defensive linemen, defensive tackle Jonathan Marshall from the Jets practice squad and outside linebacker Ola Adenini, former Pittsburgh Steeler. The Jonathan Marshall signing made sense. You needed depth. You weren't real comfortable with Carlos Davis or whoever else you were going to call up. So you bring over Marshall. Maybe he plays, but chances are he's just another inactive while Isaiah Loudermilk plays most games. And you move on. You try to fill the void of Chris Wormley. That really can't happen with the guys that you have on the roster. So you're just taking an L, but you're trying to fill the void, fill the role. Makes sense. Ola Adenini doesn't make any sense. The Steelers already have four outside linebackers. They've started using DeMarvin Leal as an outside linebacker. So as we sit here today, their outside linebacker room consists of TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, the starters. Malik Reed, who when active is the backup, but is inactive against strong running teams. Jameer Jones, who's been on the team all season and who has already outlasted other outside linebacker depth pieces. And DeMarvin Leal, who has shown that he's a capable guy that the Steelers would like to work outside and inside. So why do you need Ola? Why are you bringing another outside linebacker to compete, possibly fill a void, and who is going to be on the active roster? Seems weird to sign somebody this late in the season and say, okay, we're just going to cut you, or we're going to replace one bottom of the barrel depth piece with another, and you're just going to play special teams in replace of Jameer Jones. That doesn't make sense in week 15. That's a week 6 move. That's a week 5 move. That's a week 10 move. It's not a week 15 move. At this point, you have your roster, you have your team, you know what to expect, and you know what your game plan is. At no point are you sitting around thinking, yep, we got to change the last guy on the roster. Especially for another last guy on the roster. So why did they do it? Well, I think they did it because they realized TJ is not healthy. By no means not healthy. You could see that in his play. The dude's dealing with a rib injury that last Monday, he was walking around the locker room saying that he was so much in pain, that he was sick, that he wasn't going to be okay. Then he spoke to the media on Friday. At that point, he still was so injured that he said, yeah, it's a week-to-week thing. I'm going to push through it. I want to continue to play. But clearly, he was in pain. And then you watch the game, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this guy could barely move. That's how much pain he's in. He could barely move. And that's not on TJ Watt. I mean, the dude's had to overcome everything this season, and those seasons happen to everybody. Nobody in the NFL escapes a career injury-free. TJ, after a very healthy career, and yeah, last year there was some ups and downs, but I mean, you still win Defensive Player of the Year while you're dealing with ups and downs. It's a good season. This is his injury year. So it only makes sense that the Steelers see what we see. They see that his pressure rate from last season was at 18.6%, and this year it's down to 7.1%. They see that he barely gets to the quarterback these days. And yeah, he recorded a sack in week 14, but it was a garbage time sack on an effort that was valiant. Don't get me wrong, but wasn't the same TJ Watt. And you saw that throughout the entire game. So maybe they're thinking it's time to shut him down. Maybe they're thinking at this point in the season, they're going to prepare for the worst. And the worst is the truth. And the truth right now is the Steelers have a 0.2% chance of making the postseason. Does that mean their season's over? No. Does that mean that anybody in that locker room's given up? No. But what it means is that you're going to start preparing for that as a coaching staff. And if you believe that Ola Adenini is your best option on the market right now, a guy could come in here somewhat effortlessly, fill a void, understand the playbook, not really mess up too much, allow him to step into a very small role with little effort. It makes some sense. And if you're the Steelers and you're thinking Ola's not going to play this week, we're going to give him the week to just calm down, learn, adjust to a new scheme, adjust to a new team. It's been a couple of years. And then you see what that playoff percentage is next week, and then you make the move. Because if the Steelers lose, that 0.2% likely drops to 0. And if they win, that 0.2% likely remains the same. And I don't know the whole playoff structure. I don't know what they have to do to get into the postseason, but it doesn't look good and it doesn't look promising. And with guys like Kenny Pickett at quarterback and George Pickens and DeMarvin Leal and a new offensive line that has some young pieces and Najee Harris and, hopefully Alex Highsmith has another great year next season. You just look at TJ Watt as a piece that you're not willing to mess with when it comes to the future. TJ Watt is likely the second most important piece on your entire team. Kenny Pickett being your first. And TJ is the proven defensive player of the year. He's the proven highest paid outside linebacker. The guy is a superstar already. There's no need to risk long-term injury or impacting the career or the trajectory of his career because of a season that is likely gone. And I know that is the last thing anybody wants to hear. I don't want to say it. Nobody wants to sit here talking about, oh, the Steelers season's over. It's time for them to shut down TJ Watt. That sucks. That's not the headline people want to make. That's not the headline people want to talk about or the talking point or the argument that people want to make. I wish I could sit here and say, TJ's got to push through this pain, man, and they got to find a way to rest him for a couple of weeks before the postseason because they're ready to make a Super Bowl run. That's what I wish I was sitting here talking about. Instead, you got to be realistic. And realistically, the Steelers season is a very, very slim chance of staying alive. And TJ is a very valuable part of the future. And you're not going to sit there and say, all right, this guy's going to push through everything and anything, and he's going to play hurt, and we're going to keep him active, and we're going to risk even more damage to his body because we're 5-8 or 6-8. And our playoff chances are pretty much 0. And our Super Bowl chances are literally 0. The Steelers, statistically, mathematically, whatever word you want to use, have a 0.1% chance, less than a 0.1% chance of winning the Super Bowl. I don't know where you come up with that number. What I do know is that's a very low chance, a very low percentage to say TJ Watt is worth sticking around. And it seems like the Steelers are starting to get that. They're starting to realize how much pain he's in. Ola makes sense as a move. He could come in here and be that last guy. You start DeMarvin Leal next to Alex Highsmith. You let Malik Reed be the backup. You let Ola get a couple of reps here and a couple of reps there. You fill that 4-man rotation with a guy who was here, who's had a little bit of success here. who understands what his role is, and then you move forward without risking too much damage to TJ Watt, too much damage to the future, or taking an unnecessary risk when your season is essentially done. Again, wish I didn't have to say that. I wish that's not what we were up here talking about. I wish this was a much happier podcast. It hasn't been a happier season. So it's tough to say that this one lies on anybody but the truth. And the truth might be that we should start preparing for TJ Watt's season to be over. Derek Bell at allsteelers.com wrote a great article about this. He goes into much deeper detail than I did and has great opinions on the whole thing. And I think you should check that out and start preparing. Stinks. It's terrible news, and it's not what anybody wants to hear. But it seems like it's what the Steelers are preparing us for.